Didn't you already say a couple weeks back here we would have normally talked to Scott Wright 3-4 times by now? We'd be all keyed up and ready to go. Right?
Yeah, that's what happens, Scott. You win the Super Bowl, and the draft isn't quite as enticing anymore, right?
Well, that's the great thing about the NFL draft. It took you guys a little longer to come around, but whether you win the Super Bowl or you're the Cleveland Browns, you're going to turn your attention to the draft eventually.
Eventually. And I know at 32, it's really hard to kind of pinpoint guys. So let's look at the top of the draft first here, because really this year, Scott, it's kind of the year of the quarterback, where there's so many guys at the top of the list. And in years past, a couple years ago it was Winston and Mariota. Then there was a kind of a drop-off, but where would you say that this year's quarterback class, in your eyes, ranks?
It's an above-average class, and there's lots of options. That's the good thing. It's better than a year where there just aren't many guys that you can envision being starting quarterbacks. I think I have 6 quarterbacks going in the first round of my most recent mock draft. Some of those teams will address that need in free agency or trade, but you get the idea. It's a really strong year. And for me, the position stacks up like this. At the top, you have Sam Darnold from USC. I think he's a clear-cut top guy. Then there's a drop-off to Josh Rosen from UCLA, who'd be right in that top tier, if not number one overall, if there weren't some concerns about his character, intangibles, and durability as well. And then I think there's another drop-off, and then you have a group of Josh Allen from Wyoming, Baker Mayfield of Oklahoma, and Lamar Jackson from Louisville. Maybe you can even throw Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State into that mix. And all of them have the tools to be starting quarterbacks at the next level, but they all have potentially fatal flaws as well. And, we can get into each of them individually, but that's kind of how I see it. I think Darnold is in a class in of himself, though.
Yeah, let's start with, at the top of the draft, and Scott's latest mock draft is up February 21st. It was posted, so just less than a week ago. Sam Darnold, a lot of people either like this guy a lot or don't like him at all, it seems like. You have him going number one. Is that because you like him a lot or just because you have a feeling that's which way Cleveland might go?
Both. I'm a fan, and from what I've gathered, people around the league tend to agree that he's the top guy as well. And is he perfect? No. I mean, he's not Andrew Luck. He's not Peyton Manning. He's not that level. He has some flaws, and the biggest concern for detractors is the turnovers, both fumbles and interceptions. But he's only a redshirt sophomore. You look back to Jameis Winston, and he had the same issue coming out of college, and it didn't dissuade him from being the number one overall pick. So I think Darnold's going to be the top pick, and then after that, though, is where it gets interesting. And then I think it very much becomes a case of beauty in the eye of the beholder. And what are you looking for, and what are you willing to tolerate, and what risks are you more willing to put up with than others. So it's going to be really interesting to see how these quarterbacks coming off the board. We know the group. We just need to figure out the order.
Okay, number 5, you've got Josh Allen, Wyoming. He's another guy that seems that you're either on one side of the coin with him or the other. Not a great accuracy. The completion percentage not really there. But Wyoming, so of course people go and say, well, it's not a big-time school. They start to throw Carson Wentz into the conversation with him. He seems like the boom or bust guy of this quarterback class.
I think you hit the nail on the head with that phrase, boom or bust. And he's a really easy guy to talk yourself into because physically he's got everything you want. He's 6'5", 240, a well above average athlete for the position, a rocket arm, can make all of the throws. He's everything you want. And a good kid, too. Good intangibles. He's a hard worker, intelligent, all that stuff as well. The problem is the results just aren't always there on the field. And he didn't play against great competition, and he didn't have a lot of help around him. But when they did step it up and play better teams, he's tended to struggle. Whereas I think back to Ben Roethlisberger when he was at Miami of Ohio, he did step up a little bit when against the better teams. So that's a concern with Josh Allen. And I think he is going to go early. He's going to go in the top 10 overall, and I think he's still in the conversation for number one. But, boy, that could go sideways very easily because there's a lot of warning signs there with him as well. And I got to see him for a week up close down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile, Alabama, and that entire week was kind of a microcosm of his college career where there were flashes of brilliance, but also plenty of flashes of all those red flags as well.
Scott Wright with us, draft countdown as the NFL draft is in our view now. How about Josh Rosen? He seems to be a pretty polished passer. You have him going at number 6 to the Jets, Scott. What are the pros and the cons with Josh Rosen?
Prototypical pocket passer, and probably the best pure passer in this draft. And if teams weren't concerned about his character, I think he'd be the number 1 overall pick, and it would be a no-brainer. But I think the best way to describe the concerns are that scouts are concerned he might have that Jeff George, Jay Cutler gene. So that's what they have to dig into. And the interviews here at the scouting combine coming up are going to be very important for him. Right now, they just know him by reputation. This is their opportunity for those decision makers to look him in the eye and to ask the questions they want answers to. And then durability as well. He missed some time with some injuries, so that's a concern as well. But there isn't a better pure passer in this draft than Josh Rosen. And I think he's going to slide a little bit on draft day just because of those off the field concerns. But I wouldn't be at all surprised. At a certain point, the potential rewards far outweigh the risks. And I think once outside the top 5, I think if you're a team like the Jets, you have to take a chance on him at that point.
That's got another guy that has a lot of pros and cons, and people tend to or seem to either love or hate is Baker Mayfield. People are all over the map with him. Where do you fall on Baker Mayfield?
I got to be honest. I'm still going back and forth a little bit. And I liked him more at the Senior Bowl than I thought I was going to. And he's so unorthodox in just about every way, in terms of his character and his demeanor at that position, to his size, to his style of play on the field. He's just unorthodox in all of those regards. But at the end of the day, the results are impressive. And for example, I remarked down at the Senior Bowl practices that, it doesn't always look perfect in terms of the mechanics and the fundamentals, but the ball gets where it's going, and that's the most important thing at the end of the day. And his teammates love him. I think he's a guy that college football fans, many love to hate, but his teammates love him. They really rally around him. And at the same time, there's some teams that his personality and his lack of those prototypical tools are going to scare some teams away. But ultimately, he's going to go somewhere in the top half of the first round. I wouldn't be shocked if they were in the top 5 overall, to maybe the Browns at number 4 if they didn't take a quarterback at 1, maybe the Broncos at number 5. But he's going to go early. But there again, I go back and forth. I have him kind of late first round grade-wise. So and that's one I'm still trying to figure out myself.
Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com. We're looking at the top of the draft. All these quarterbacks. Scott, you said 6. Lamar Jackson. Some people don't even look at him as a quarterback. Do you think that he is definitively a quarterback? I mean, I think he's a quarterback. I think the people who are looking at him as a wideout is unfair to this kid. I mean, he was outstanding. Mm-hmm. But is he a first-round quarterback?
I think the talk about him moving to another position is absurd. And that's not to say he doesn't have the talent and the tools to play wide receiver. He does, but he's a quarterback. And we can debate how good of a quarterback prospect he is, but he is a quarterback prospect. And I don't think those comparisons to Michael Vick are out of the realm possibility, except he's bigger and a more polished passer coming out of college than Vick was. So I am a fan of Lamar Jackson. And one thing I kind of asked myself, and I was going to post this as a poll on Twitter, but value-wise, would I rather have Baker Mayfield at number 5 or Lamar Jackson at number 25? And because they both come with their own set of risks, I think I'd rather have Lamar Jackson at 25. So he's going to be an interesting guy, and I do think he's a first-round pick when all is said and done, especially once the quarterbacks start coming off the board. The supply is not going to meet the demand, and if you're a team like Arizona Cardinals maybe sitting there at 15 and the top 4 are gone, I think he could be in the conversation for them. Buffalo Bills at 21 and 22. Maybe even the Jacksonville Jaguars at 29 bring him in as a insurance policy against Blake Bortles. So there's a lot of potential landing spots, I think, for Lamar Jackson in the first round, and he will be a first-round quarterback, and I'm a believer.
Okay, so you got 6 in the first round. We just kind of went over them. Are there other guys that you think are in the conversation, or is it that bunch there and then a big drop-off, or do you think there are other intriguing quarterback prospects that you like?
Yeah, the other one of them was Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State, the big, prolific pocket passer, put up huge numbers there in that offense. And I think he's got a chance to sneak into the back end of round 1. Otherwise, he'll go in round 2, probably the earlier part of it. But then I think there's a pretty significant drop-off. And then what you get into is what you get most years at the quarterback position is a group of day three guys who will fall into one of two categories. Either they're long-term developmental projects or their upside is that of career backups. And I think that's going to be very much the case this year. And I think that next group then after the drop-off, you're going to be looking at Mike White from Western Kentucky, Luke Falk from Washington State, Kyle Lauletta from Richmond, who had a really strong showing at the Senior Bowl and improved his stock, Kurt Benkert from Virginia. So I think those are all going to be maybe late day two, otherwise early to mid day three types. That's going to be that next tier at that quarterback position. But I think with each one of those guys, they all fall into that category of either career backup or major project.
Scott Wright, DraftCountdown.com is with us on the Boardwalk Honda hotline, and we know that Sam Darnold, who we talked about, regarded by many as the number one quarterback, maybe the number one overall pick, he will not throw at the combine. That's becoming more and more, of the norm, right? I mean, there's a lot of quarterbacks who are just saying, I'm not going to throw at the combine anymore. Do you think that any of these guys that we just talked about would benefit from throwing that can maybe move up this list?
Yeah, and it's not unusual. I go back. I remember Peyton Manning did throw at the scouting combine, so it's been going on for a long time. The very top guys, they prefer to wait till their pro day where they can have an orchestrated event that they've rehearsed and practiced in an environment they're comfortable with, receivers they're comfortable with. So not a huge shot to see Darnold not do that. Josh Rosen and even Baker Mayfield, for that matter, the biggest questions they're going to have to answer are in the interviews with teams. Josh Allen, there's no question about his ability to throw the ball. So I think all eyes are going to be on Lamar Jackson. And for those that do still doubt his ability to play the quarterback position, I think they're going to want to watch closely, and not just in terms of the big ones like the arm strength and the accuracy, but the smaller things too, the anticipation, the timing. So I think of that top group of quarterbacks, I think Lamar Jackson probably has the most riding on the on-field workouts.
I'm interested to get into your take on a couple of other things here. At the running back position, okay? You've got Barkley going 2 to the Giants, which would be a huge pickup for them. They've struggled in the running game so much. But how has the value of drafting running backs changed over the years? It seems that the running back position is kind of coming back, but that's because guys who were drafted in middle rounds have come on. Kamara, you got here in Philly. I mean, Clement
undrafted.
Was undrafted.
Clement, yeah.
So how do you look at the running back position and how it's kind of changed in the draft the last couple of years?
Yeah, and there was a time maybe 5 years ago where we were wondering, will a running back ever be taken in the top 10 overall again? And then came along Todd Gurley, and he more than justified that selection. So the next year, it made it easier for the Cowboys to make that investment in Ezekiel Elliott. And then we've seen it too with Leonard Fournette, and Saquon Barkley absolutely belongs in that conversation with those guys. And he's going to be a top 5 overall pick when all is said and done. But as you say, there are talented runners to be found throughout the draft, well beyond the first round. You mentioned Alvin Kamara last year. Kareem Hunt was a third-round pick. Corey Clement was an undrafted free agent. And it's going to be a similar situation this year. We had a record number of underclassmen came out, really strengthened the talent pool, and running back in particular benefits from that. And whether it's round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, I can give you options of guys that are going to be there that have the ability to come in and be starters in the right situation. The guy I'm a big fan of that I guess I would be targeting if I was a running back needy team would be in the 3rd round, Rashad Penny from San Diego State. And he could go in the 2nd, but running backs tend to fall, and I bet he'll be there in the 3rd round in part because of some concerns about his ability to pass block, which he absolutely needs to work on. But, boy, he is a dynamic runner, excellent size. He can catch the ball in the backfield, also a really good return man. So, and I could give you a guy like that in just about every round. So a lot of talent at running back again this year, and that's why I always say if I ran a team philosophically, as much as I like Saquon Barkley, I think he's potentially an elite prospect, which I don't throw around that term lightly. I would still wait and take advantage of the value and the depth.
Yeah, Barkley's a guy I agree. I like him a lot too. At number 2, you have him in your mock draft. That would be I guess with Elliott and Gurley the last couple of years, but that would be as high as we've seen a running back go in years. So I mean, he's that level of player.
He is, and he's going to put a show on at the scouting combine with his blend of size and speed and power. People don't really talk about that, but he's super strong. And it sounds like he's going to do a full workout in Indy. So the buzz on him is just going to heighten, and he's going to go somewhere in that top 5. If he doesn't go 2 to the Giants, he could go 3 to the Colts. He could go 4 to the Browns. So he's got a lot of potential landing spots. I think his absolute floor would be the Buccaneers at number 7.
Scott, who's your favorite wide receiver, and how deep is the wide receiver class?
Boy, that's a tough one. This is not a great crop of wide receivers. And I'm actually working on tweaking my rankings there right now, and I'm struggling a little bit with it, just finding enough players that I consider early round picks based on the averages. And Calvin Ridley from Alabama, I think, is the clear-cut top guy, but probably not even a top 10 overall pick. I think if he went in the top 10, it would be a bit of a reach. Then after that, some people like Cortland Sutton from SMU, some like Christian Kirk from Texas A&M. Very different types of players. I was really impressed with James Washington from Oklahoma State down at the Senior Bowl. Really showed that his 20 yards per catch career average in college was no fluke. Made a lot of big plays down the field vertically in Mobile. But then I think if I were a team looking for a wide receiver this year, I think the 2nd or 3rd round is where I'd be targeting someone. I think there's better value to be had there. A guy like Deion Kane from Clemson or DJ Moore from Maryland in the 2nd round, or then into the 3rd round, Michael Gallup from Colorado State. I'm a fan of Dante Pettis from Washington, who's also the number 1 return man in this class, and maybe the most intriguing guy of this whole group, DJ Chark from LSU. He's 6'4", 200 pounds. He runs a 4.4, tremendous athlete, was really hurt at LSU by their struggles in the passing game, which has been a common theme for a lot of their receivers. That's how they held back Odell Beckham and Jarvis Landry as well. But DJ Chark really stepped up at the Senior Bowl and flashed and had a terrific game, showed he could be a big play threat. So keep an eye on DJ Chark. He could be that sleeper of that group that a team gets in the 2nd or 3rd round, kind of like Michael Thomas a couple years ago at the Saints, who really outperforms his draft slot.
By the way, Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com. Check out his rankings. If you question how much Scott knows, he's got a guy from the University of Montreal ranked 58th on his wide receiver list here, which is who knew they even played football at the University de Montreal?
Well, and he was at the East-West Shrine game, and he got an opportunity to compete there, so that puts him on the radar.
Unbelievable. When you look at your favorite position in this draft, where do you go?
You know, it's not the sexiest one, but I'm going to say interior offensive line. Kind of group the guards and centers together. It's a really strong class of the first 3-4 rounds. And if you need a blocker this year, one thing struck me working on my most recent mock draft. I went 2 rounds for the first time, and I was struck by what good talent was available along the offensive line between picks like 25 and 50. And one guy in particular I'm a huge fan of is Will Hernandez from UTEP. And he's not going to be a fit for everyone. If you want a quick, athletic, agile offensive guard who's going to move, he's not your guy. He is a big 330-pound mauler in the middle. He's physical. He's nasty. So I'm a big fan of his. And I could give you 5, 6 other interior offensive linemen that are going to be selected somewhere in that top 50, top 75 range that I'm huge fans of. So that's where I go to. But I'm a fan of the guys in the trenches.
And we know that we looked at Philadelphia this year, Brandon Brooks, the right guard, and then when they plugged in Wisniewski, they were having problems with Sayamala. When they went to Wisniewski, that kind of changed a lot of things for that team. And Jason Kelsey may have been the most important player on the team this year. And we're talking with Scott Wright, draftcountdown.com. Make sure getting ready for the draft, you follow him on Twitter and check out his website, draftcountdown.com, as we'll be talking with him throughout the draft process here. Bradley Chubb is the defensive end. A lot of people thought he might be the number 1 pick in this draft, depending on need here. But do you look at him as the best defensive player in the draft?
Yeah, Bradley Chubb, he really is the total package. And he's not a dynamic player, even though his impressive statistics, 60 tackles for a loss for his career, 26 sacks, really impressive numbers. He translated his talent into on-field production, also outstanding intangibles, really checks all the boxes, and he's clearly the top pass rusher in this draft, and he's going to go in the top 5 overall picks. I think in the top 3. I have him going to the Colts, so I think he is the top defender. I think the only other guys you'd make an argument for would be maybe Minkah Fitzpatrick from Alabama, the defensive back, or Vita Vea, the defensive tackle from Washington. But I think Chubb will be the first defender off the board. And the thing I caution with him is I don't think he's got the upside of, say, a Jadeveon Clowney or someone like that, or Julius Peppers. I think of him more the long lines of a Justin Smith type of player, a Chris Long type of player, who's going to be a really good, solid, all-around player. Maybe not a double-digit sack guy, but reliable for a long time. But I don't know if you're getting a dynamic 20-sack-a-year type of player in Bradley Chubb. So I guess that would be my big caution. But at the same time, he's clearly the top pass rusher available. And then there's a pretty distinct drop-off after him to the point where I think guys in the next tier are probably going to get pushed up the board a little bit.
He's Scott Wright. By the way, his needs for Philly: linebacker, offensive tackle, and defensive tackle. The 3 needs he has listed for Philadelphia. Check out who he has going to the Eagles at number 32 by heading to draftcountdown.com. Scott, we always appreciate the time. We look forward to talking more draft. We haven't been in draft mode in Super Bowl City, man.
Well, we are now. It's draft season.
All right, pal. We'll catch up soon.
All right. Talk to you anytime.